show is to bring clarity to the news coming out of Washington, D.C., and to expose the deception that has plagued our nation's capital for decades.
Exposing Washington.
Each Saturday at 2:30 p.m. Central.
On American Family Radio.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged.
An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Howdy and welcome to this brand new broadcast edition of Focal Point on the American Family Radio Network. Brian Fisher is my name, congenial, convivial, amiable, and effervescent as always. Our first post Share-a-thon edition of Focal Point. And I want to lead off by taking this opportunity to thank you as our listening audience for your generosity. We had the best Share-a-thon that we've ever had, both in terms of the amount of money we raised and in terms of the number of pledges we received. Over 14,000 pledges in this latest Share-a-thon, and we received $2.3 million in pledges, the best Share-a-thon we've ever had. So it's a sign to us that you want us to stay on the air. You want us to keep bringing you the content that we bring you, the perspective that we bring you, and that's what we fully intend to do right here at Focal Point. Well, let's jump into the Word, as is our custom. We're using a schedule you can find at pray.afa.net. Don't forget, we're live streaming at Facebook, Focal Point Brian Fisher, or Focal Point with Brian Fisher, and it'll pop right up. We're also live streaming at YouTube, if you'd like to go to our YouTube account and catch us there. Now, we in our reading are in 1 Kings chapter 22. Now, the setting here is that Israel, the northern kingdom, Judah's the southern kingdom, and Syria had been at peace for about 3 years. But somewhere in there, Syria had taken possession of a city by the name of Ramoth Gilead. They'd taken it from Israel, and Ahab, the king of Israel, he wanted it back. So he calls Jehoshaphat, who is the king of the southern kingdom, Judah, and says, I need some help here. A little worried about going up against Syria by myself, but I think if we team up, we can handle this guy no problem. So Jehoshaphat says in chapter 22, verse 4, I am as you are, my people as your people, my horses as your horses. So it says, let's do this thing. Now, Jehoshaphat only had one request. He says, what we need to do, verse 5, is inquire first for the word of the Lord. Ahab says, no problem. I've already replaced the 400 prophets that Elijah cut down. I've replaced them. I'll call them in. And they all said the same thing in verse 6. Go up, for the Lord, that's Adonai, will give it into the hand of the king. Now, Jehoshaphat says, look, these guys look a little familiar to me. These guys seem kind of sketchy to me. You got anybody else around here can give us a genuine word from the Lord? Is there not another prophet of the Lord, of Yahweh, of whom we may inquire before we risk everything on going to battle? Now, Ahab says there is one guy, but I can't stand this guy because he's so negative all the time. He never has anything nice to say about me. It's all about the stuff I'm doing wrong. So there is yet one man, he says, by whom we may inquire of Yahweh, Micaiah the son of Imlah, but I hate him, for he never prophesies good concerning me, but evil. You know, the application is that what Ahab wanted, as a lot of people want, they want preachers who will tell him what he wanted to hear, not what he needed to hear, which is what Micaiah was determined to bring him. Now, there's some pretty popular preachers out there, TV preachers, who got that way by preaching Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farms kind of sermons. It's all sweetness and light. They stay away from the hard sayings and hard truths of Scripture. They tell people what they want to hear. They tell them that every day can be their best day ever. But we need men who will open the Word and tell us the truth. That's the kind of guy that Micaiah was. So both the kings are sitting on their thrones. The 400 guys come out, and all together they said, all the prophets prophesied and said, go up to Ramoth Gilead and triumph. Yahweh will give it into the king's hand. They were unanimous, all 400. So then Ahab sends for Micaiah. This is the guy that Jehoshaphat wanted to hear from, the true prophet of Yahweh. Now the messenger that went to get him said to Micaiah, look, everybody else is saying the same thing. Give us all a break and let your word be like the word of one of them and speak favorably to the king. Micaiah says, nope, can't do it. Verse 14, as the Lord lives, what the Lord says to me, that I will speak. This guy is one of my all-time heroes. He simply said, I cannot proclaim, I cannot preach, I can't teach anything that is contrary to the word of God. So Micaiah comes before the kings. Ahab says what's going to happen, and Mike decides to mess with his head. He says, go up and triumph. The Lord will give it into the hand of the king. Now Ahab knew he was messing with him, so he puts him under oath, verse 16. How many times shall I make you swear that you speak to me nothing but the truth in the name of Yahweh? Well, Mike says, as long as you put it like that, I saw all Israel scattered on the mountains, like sheep that have no shepherd, and the Lord said, these have no master, let each return to his home in peace. That's what Micaiah saw. That's the message the Lord gave him. That's the one he delivered to Jehoshaphat. And this exasperates Ahab. He throws up his hands. He says to Jehoshaphat, I told you this guy was a Debbie Downer. Didn't I tell you that he would not prophesy good concerning me, but evil? Now somehow Jehoshaphat talked himself into going against Micaiah's counsel and going into war despite this counsel from God. And even worse, Jehoshaphat let Ahab talk him into going into battle dressed up like a king, while Ahab went in disguised as an ordinary foot soldier. And what they wanted to do, of course, was take out the king, and then they would neutralize the whole army. So Jehoshaphat, probably not the sharpest blade in the box, but somehow he survived in this war, and Ahab got pierced with an arrow that was fired at random and went in between the hinges on his armor, and he was mortally wounded. He bled out in his chariot. His blood pooled on the floor of the chariot. So when Ahab went down, when they saw him go down, his whole army scattered to the four winds, just like Micaiah had prophesied, every man to his city and every man to his country, according to verse 36. Now when they took Ahab's body back to Samaria, his chariot back to Samaria to bury him, they washed out the chariot, and sure enough, just as Elijah prophesied, the dogs came and licked up his blood. Now there's one lesson here above all others, is that we need to listen to friends. We need to listen to pastors who will tell us what we need to hear instead of what we want to hear or what we like to hear. Don't give in to those that just want to tickle your ears. Now let's not forget that Micaiah, one of the great heroes in the Bible to me, at least in my judgment, was one man willing to go up against 400 men in order to stand without apology, without flinching, without retreating, without surrendering for the truth of the Word of God. So don't forget, as Alex McFarland says, the truth is the truth, even if only one man is saying it, and error is error, even if everybody is saying it. And we know that those who tell the truth will prevail in the end. As Alexander Solzhenitsyn said, one word of truth outweighs the whole world. Well, let's go to prayer. Lord God, please protect me and my family, this listening audience, every voice, everyone within the sound of my voice right now, and their families. Protect every man, woman, and child in this land, including all of our elected officials and our president, President Trump. Protect us from the foolishness of Ahab, who refused to seek counsel from you before important decisions. I pray that we will not seek out only those who will tell us what we want to hear as he did, but instead who will tell us what we need to hear. May we open our lives to godly counsel and be willing to listen to those who will tell us the truth even when it hurts. Prompt us to imitate Jehoshaphat, who did seek your counsel before making major decisions and commitments, but please protect us from his foolishness, the foolishness of seeking counsel from you, receiving it, and then choosing to ignore it. May we imitate the example of Micaiah and be willing to stand absolutely alone for your truth when necessary. May we have his courage and boldness and willingness even to suffer for holding to the truth. By your strength, may we resist the sometimes intense pressure from people around us. In Jesus' name.
Hi, this is Kirk Cameron, and I am honored to be partnering with the Ministry of Preborn and American Family Radio to help moms choose life.
Actor Kirk Cameron supports Preborn.
My 4 oldest children were adopted. That is because of caring and compassionate people who help those young mothers choose life. My wife is an adopted child, and her birth mother chose life for her. If it weren't for those caring individuals that help those young moms value the sacredness of life, I wouldn't have my wife, I wouldn't have my 4 adopted children, and the 2 natural-born children that we have wouldn't exist either. My whole family is here because of people that are involved with ministries like Preborn.
Underwrite a free ultrasound and help save a baby's life. Go to preborn.com. That's preborn.com. Or dial pound 250 and say keyword baby. All gifts are tax deductible. Your love can save a life.
Your eyes have seen my unformed substance, and in your book were written all the days that were ordained for me, when as yet there was not one of them. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute. Tennessee Governor Bill Haslam has signed a bill which allows them to bar TennCare, Tennessee's Medicaid program, from giving money to any abortion facility. In the wake of having given Planned Parenthood nearly $1 million over the last 6 years, Tennessee has now moved to defund the baby murder machine. Funds that were once directed toward abortions will now be given to other healthcare providers. Folks, the tide is turning.
Listen each weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. Central for the Hamilton Corner, or visit the podcast page at afr.net for more from Abraham Hamilton III, Public Policy Analyst for the American Family Association.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio.
Howdy, Brian Fisher here. Welcome back to Focal Point, American Family Radio. Glad to have you in the conversation. Got a quick update. You are aware of the shooting that took place at the Waffle House. The guy went in there, he shot 2 people outside the restaurant, gunned down 2 people inside the restaurant, and then fled, and the police weren't able to track him down. We've got an update on that. We'll have our intern, Kelly Crampton, who's back with us. We missed her. She's now back with us, helping to cover some of the ground that Jeff Reed normally occupies. But remember, just going back, well, let's get the update first. Kelly, what's the latest? There's just breaking news. We're just getting this.
Yeah, the breaking update was that as of 2:10 p.m. Eastern time, so 1:10 our time.
That's 7 minutes ago.
Yes, he was taken into custody.
Okay. So the guy is in custody. He'd stolen a BMW several days before the Waffle House shooting, and the police couldn't catch up with him. He got away from them. So they tried to track him down using GPS, and they did find the car, the BMW, parked behind where they know now that he lived, but they didn't know who he was, didn't know where he lived, so that didn't help them. And by the way, just one other thing about this Waffle House deal. You know, this guy was a hero. The guy that took him down, everybody recognizes rightly that this guy was a hero. You know, there was a pause while the guy was reloading his rifle, and this hero took the advantage of that pause to rush the guy and to tackle him and disarm him, took the gun from him, and the guy ran off. So kudos to this guy. It took an enormous amount of bravery to do that. But think how much easier this would have gone down if this guy had been armed. He might have been able to shoot this guy before he'd killed the 2 people inside the restaurant, or maybe one of them could have been spared. So again, we see what happens when you do not have people allowed to carry arms in their own defense. The Waffle House, of course, is a gun-free zone. Well, let's jump into some of our sound bites today, and I want to start off by getting into the sound bites that have to do with all this business, with the Russia investigation, all that kind of stuff. I tell you, this thing is starting to back up big time on the Democrats and on regressives, because it's increasingly clear that Bob Mueller's got nothing. He's got zip. He's got bupkis on Trump. And remember, Trump is the target here. He's the one that they want to get. They could care less about the small fry. They don't know Paul Manafort. They don't care about him. He's the least of their concerns. They don't care about the 13 Russians that got indicted. Might look good on Mueller's resume, but there's no extradition treaty between us and Russia. So those guys are never going to stand trial in the United States. So let's pick up on some of the sound bites from James Comey over the weekend. Let's begin with clip number 3. This is James Comey talking with James Tapper on the subject of Trump and Russia.
Something you said to me in one of your interviews stood out. Quote, if you've been investigating something for almost a year and you don't have a general sense of where it's likely to end up, you should be fired because you're incompetent. You write something similar to that in the book, and it's you explaining why you wrote the letter, basically exonerating Hillary Clinton from criminal behavior before you had even interviewed her. But let's apply that same standard to the Mueller investigation. You oversaw the Russia investigation for almost 10 months. Do you have a general sense of how that investigation is going to end up?
In some respects I did at the time, but not completely. I suspect that the team that's investigating it now has a general sense. I have no idea what that is.
I think one of the frustrations the media has with James Comey, and by the way, it's Jake Tapper. I think I misspoke and called him James. One of the frustrations that the media has with James Comey is just how vague and indifferent and qualified all of his answers are. He's always qualifying them. He never says anything definitively and clearly and finally. It's always, well, I don't know. I'm not sure I remember. I think they do, but I'm not sure. I don't remember exactly how that went down, so they're getting kind of frustrated with him. And his whole book tour, which is designed in his mind to vindicate him before the eyes of the American public, it ain't working. But notice what Jake Tapper quizzes him on. Remember that James Comey, when he wrote that exoneration letter for Hillary Clinton, remember he wrote that letter 2 months before he'd even interviewed her. He hadn't even interviewed her. There were 17 interviews that still had to take place, and he wrote this exoneration letter before any of those interviews had taken place, completely exonerated Hillary Clinton. And he's saying, well, the reason I did is I had a pretty good sense about where this thing was going to end up. We'd been investigating this thing for almost a year. We'd been investigating Hillary for almost a year. We had a real good idea where this thing was going to end up. So Jake Tapper asked the obvious question. That's about how long you investigated Donald Trump. So are you ready to tell us where your sense of where that investigation is going? And he said, well, no, not really. In some respects, I did at some time, but not completely. Notice how many qualifications are in that one sentence. Do you have a general sense of how that investigation is going to end up? In some respects, that's a qualification. I did at the time, that's a qualification, but not completely. That's a qualification. I suspect, that's a qualification, that the team that's investigating it has a general sense. I have no idea what that is. A fifth qualification in 2 sentences. No wonder the media is kind of frustrated with this guy, and he's disappointing them. This was supposed to be the tour where he was going to reveal in the book, where he was going to reveal a smoking gun that was going to hang out the goods on Trump for one and all to see. Now here's clip 2 from James Comey's conversation with Jake Tapper.
I mean, do you have evidence that President Trump has been compromised by the Russians? Have you seen evidence of it?
No, and I think I've said that throughout. I'm trying to be transparent as here's my reasoning. Here's why an honest answer has to be it's possible. Now, I'm not saying it's likely. In fact, I've said all along, and I'm repeating it to you here today, it's unlikely in my view, but it's possible.
So there's another hedge, unlikely but possible. But notice this. I mean, notice this. Do you have evidence, Jake Tapper says, that the president has been compromised by the Russians? Have you seen evidence of it? Comey's answer right off the bat is no. And he says, I think I've said that throughout. I've never said that we had any evidence that Trump had been compromised by the Russians. He says, I haven't seen any evidence of that. It's possible, but in my view, it is unlikely. So Comey's saying, look, this whole rush to impeach Trump and to find something that we can hang around his neck, the smoking gun, there's nothing there. I've been working this thing as long as I worked the Hillary Clinton thing. I exonerated her clean as the driven snow. It's about how long I've been looking into Comey. I've got no more on Comey than we did at the beginning. Now, Jonathan Turley, clip 5, he weighs in on the harm that James Comey's doing to the FBI. You know, and again, the FBI used to be, before this whole thing, the FBI, I would submit, was the most respected agency in the federal government. Everybody admired the FBI. Everybody admired, they were always dressed in suits, always had short haircuts. They were always all business. They were about the law. They were about getting their man. They were about seeing that justice was done. And everybody admired the FBI, and everybody admired the agency of the FBI and the agents of the FBI. Now, I would submit to you that trust and confidence has largely been shattered, and that shattered by James Comey, by Andrew Strzok, by Lisa Page, by Andrew McCabe. All of these bad actors have been smearing, I mean not smearing in the sense of a false allegation, but they've been contaminating the reputation of the FBI. Here's Jonathan Turley, law professor at George Washington University. Here's what he said, clip 5.
FBI directors have valued their circumspection. You know, they need to have presidents trust them. And Comey has really destroyed that. And it's not just the book. It's not just the tenor, but the timing. You know, the fact that he rushed this book out is inexcusable. He was the head of this investigation and is now one of the cooperating witnesses. Nobody would suggest that this book is benefiting the investigation. To the contrary, he's undermining his role as a witness. And so the question is, why is he doing it? And the answer is rather obvious. He's going to make a lot of money, but in the process, he's going to do untold harm to the institution he once headed.
That's Jonathan Turley. You know, I was reading in the scriptures yesterday. We studied this in our cell group last night about how Ahab sold himself to do evil in the eyes of the Lord. Well, Jonathan Turley probably is completely unfamiliar with 1 Kings 21, but look what he's saying here. He's saying this is exactly what James Comey has done. He has sold himself to do evil. He's in this for the money. He's going to make a big boatload, a big pile of money, but in the process, he is going to contaminate and smudge and dishonor the reputation of the FBI beyond repair. It'll take generations, what Turley is saying, to undo the damage that James Comey has done to what used to be the sterling reputation of the FBI. Now, let's hear what he had to say about what Comey did when he was fired, clip number 6.
When Comey was fired, he removed 7 memos from the FBI, in my view, inappropriately. That was FBI material linked to an investigation. 4 of those memos now are believed to be classified. Now, it's just like the book. He could have given it to Congress. He could have given it to the investigators. But instead, the man charged with finding leakers became a leaker himself and gave it to a friend so the information could get to the media. That's not ethical leadership.
So notice what Turley is saying here about James Comey. This is pretty amazing, really. He said what Comey did is he removed 7 memos from the FBI when he was fired. They were all FBI property. They had been produced on FBI time. They'd been produced in FBI offices, in FBI vehicles, and on FBI computers. Every one of those was the property of the FBI. They weren't James Comey's private property. 4 of the memos contained classified information, and James Comey leaked those through a friend of his, a law professor at Columbia, to the newspapers, to the Wall Street Journal and to the New York Times primarily. And the New York Times, of course, went public with it. So if it is a crime, and it is, if it is a crime to leak classified information, I think the real appropriate question is, why is James Comey not in prison? We know it. Everybody knows it. Jonathan Turley knows it. Everybody knows that those memos contain classified information and that he leaked them. Everybody knows that he's the leaker. That is a felony offense, mishandling classified information. And Comey must figure, well, I gave Hillary a pass on this, so I guess I'm just going to give myself a pass on this. But Comey ought to be prosecuted. Comey ought to be in prison as we speak. Focal Point, American Family Radio. We'll be right back.
This is Dr. Richard Land, president of Southern Evangelical Seminary. Welcome to Bringing Every Thought Captive. A decorated Army chaplain has been reprimanded in a possibly career-ending action. What was his offense? His failure to include a lesbian couple in his planned marriage retreat. When the chaplain realized he could not participate in condoning same-sex marriage, he rescheduled the event with another chaplain who had no moral objection to same-sex marriage. But that did not stop or satisfy the Army. Here's the problem. Chaplain Scott Squires is a Southern Baptist chaplain endorsed by the Southern Baptist North American Mission Board. The Mission Board insists that their chaplains that they endorse will not affirm same-sex relationships or the homosexual lifestyle, period. Had Chaplain Squires gone ahead with the marriage retreat, he would have risked his own endorsement by the Southern Baptist Convention and violated his own conscience. But it gets worse. The Army officials who investigated said Chaplain Squires had discriminated by merely explaining his religious beliefs to the lesbian soldier. If that decision is upheld, it could mean silencing or expelling all traditional values chaplains from the U.S. military. This is outrageous. Let's all pray for Chaplain Squires, and let your congressmen, your senators, and the president know that you want this outrageously un-American censorship of religious belief in our military to be reversed. This is the kind of thing that's going to continue to happen as the gay and lesbian movement pushes to force everyone to conform and to affirm their lifestyle and violate their religious conscience if they don't believe that it's a moral lifestyle, as traditional Christians do not, because the Bible condemns same-sex relationships, period. This is Richard Land.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher
on American Family Radio.
Listen to the audio podcast or download today's program at afr.net. You can also read Brian Fisher's columns at afa.net.
afa.net.
Howdy and welcome back to Focal Point. Brian Fisher is my name. Alongside me, broadcast engineer Rob Gardner and our intern Kelly Crampton. Good to have you with us in the conversation. You know, when we start talking about this collusion with Russia, and I've got a column here by Michael Barone, who is an experienced conservative commentator, and he says, look, the real collusion here, if there's any collusion with Russia, it's between the Obama administration and Hillary Clinton and the Democratic National Committee. That's where your collusion is, and they were colluding to impact the 2016 election. All the stuff that they want to try to hang around Trump's neck, that's what they were doing. You know, Lisa Page and Peter Strzok, I mean, they said we cannot afford to let Trump win this thing. We've got to come up with an insurance policy to keep him from winning. So there's collusion right there between the two of them to interfere with the 2016 election, to stop Trump from being elected, and then to develop an insurance policy in order to unseat him if he did happen to win. And remember, the Steele dossier was compiled by this Christopher Steele, who was an MI6 guy with the help of Russia, with the help of Russian diplomats, with the help of Russian sources. So Hillary Clinton helped to pay for that. The Democratic National Committee helped to pay for that. They put their money paying Christopher Steele to go talk to Russians to try to dig up dirt on Trump that they could use against him to affect the 2016 election. And remember how gaga the left went, regressives went, when there was that meeting in Trump Tower with this lawyer from Russia and some other guy from Russia and one of Donald Trump's sons. They went nuts. They went crazy. Here it is. This is the collusion we're talking about. Turns out they didn't talk for 3 minutes about the election. But where is the same outrage from the same people over the evident collusion that the Democratic Party and Hillary Rodham Clinton and the Democrats and the left and the Department of Justice in the form of Andrew McCabe and Peter Strzok and Lisa Page are doing to collude together to throw the election to Hillary Clinton. The silence is absolutely deafening. And, you know, one of the instances of collusion, this wasn't with the Russians really, but don't forget that James Comey got hammered because he reopened the Hillary Clinton investigation on October 28. But the reason for that delay, it wasn't actually Comey's fault. Remember that Andrew McCabe had stumbled across the material on Anthony Weiner's laptop weeks before this, and he sat on it. He came across this early in October, and he just kept it to himself. He sat on it because he knew this was dangerous business. He knew this could be a game changer in the conversation, in the election, in the campaign. Did not want to let anybody else know that he had it. Finally, he gave it to Comey. Comey looked at it and said, I'm going to have to do something with this. If I don't do something public with this, people are going to discredit Hillary Clinton after the election. They're going to think that her election is tainted because because my aide, this cotton picker Andrew McCabe, sat on this information until it was too late to do anything about it. So Comey, to do damage control, comes out October 28 and says we've got more damaging information. The investigation into Hillary's emails has been reopened, and he closed it several days later. Done deal. Put it in the archives, out of everybody's sight, out of mind. By the way, Donald Trump, looking at a poll here on Donald Trump's standing among evangelicals, it's at a record high. Remember that Donald Trump got 81% of the vote of white evangelicals. That's what carried him to victory in the fall. 81% of the vote of white evangelical electives. Now, we find this latest poll from the Public Religion Research Institute, 75% of white evangelicals view Trump favorably, just 22% say unfavorably. That's a gap of 53%. That's a monster gap among white evangelicals. His favorability with white evangelicals has not fallen below 65% since he was inaugurated. And I think the answer really is quite simple. It's because of the stance he's taken on the sanctity of unborn human life, the conscience protections he's putting in place for medical providers so they can't be forced to participate in medical procedures like abortion or hormone treatment for transgenders against their will. That's huge. Protecting the little sisters of the poor from being forced to provide abortifacients to their employees. And he's also been a staunch defender of religious liberty. He's pledged to defend it, and he has actually been doing it. So that's why white evangelicals support him. He's standing with us on the issues that we care about the most, the sanctity of life and religious liberty. So no surprise there. Now let's go to clip number 7. This is Michael Barone talking about what we were mentioning earlier about the fact that if there's a collusion going on here, it's not between the Trump campaign and Russia.
A lot of Democrats, a lot of people in the press, a lot of critics of Donald Trump have been itching at the bait here, waiting for Donald Trump to be thrown out of town by Robert Mueller. He's going to find that there was collusion with Russia, which is somehow a crime. He'd be forced to resign. It's like Richard Nixon. And I think it's become increasingly obvious that the chances of that happening are zooming down toward zero. And the reports that you had from Bloomberg News about Rod Rosenstein goes in that direction. None of the crimes that Mr. Mueller has brought prosecutions for have anything to do with the Trump campaign or the Trump campaign having some illicit ties. And I think what we're seeing, on the other hand, is that we're seeing an increasing likelihood that there is collusion here, but that the collusion was going on by the enemies of Mr. Trump in the Obama administration, law enforcement, and intelligence operations.
So Michael Barone saying, look, the chances that Donald Trump is going to be in trouble on this deal are zooming toward zero. Remember, this is their goal, is that they were going to, that this investigation, Mueller was going to reveal that there was collusion with Russia, somehow turn that into a crime. Collusion is not a crime as you know, in the statute books, that Trump would be forced to resign as president, be like Richard Nixon. That was the template that they were using in this deal. And Michael Barone, again, I said, is a seasoned observer. He's a conservative guy, seasoned observer. And he says it's becoming obvious that the chances of this happening, of some kind of collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia, Trump being forced to resign, the chances of any of that happening are zooming down towards zero. Meanwhile, more evidence is surfacing that if there's any collusion, it's between the Obama administration, between the Department of Justice, law enforcement, and intelligence operations, CIA. Now, you know, one of the hopes that the Democrats have been nursing is that they were going to find enough to impeach Donald Trump. Let's listen to what Cory Booker, he's the senator from New Jersey. He was the guy that was grilling Mike Pompeo, who, by the way, looks like he's going to get confirmed. We'll talk about second hour. Get confirmed as Secretary of State, despite all the bloviating from the left. But Cory Booker was the guy that just grilled Mike Pompeo.
I think that
about the issue
we
of,
undermine our position as Democrats.
Okay, about the issue of his view of sexuality, homosexuality, and Mike Pompeo stuck to his guns. I did not believe gay marriage was right then. I don't believe it's right now. So he didn't back down, didn't flinch. Now here's Cory Booker, and again, he's a Democrat. They've been looking for some smoking gun that would lead to impeachment of Donald Trump. And listen to what Cory Booker has to admit.
I think that we undermine our position as Democrats if we are reaching out now for impeachment, which is just going to whip up more of the political divisions, the political debates. And I know I'll take criticism for that, but that's okay. We need to have sober minds, fact-based conclusions, conclusions drawn from evidence that's presented. If we protect the special counsel, especially, this investigation is going to come to a conclusion, right? And there are going to be facts, and we can base our actions based upon those facts.
All right, so Cory Booker says it's way premature to be talking about impeachment. We don't have what it takes. We need facts. We need evidence to pursue impeachment. We simply do not have it. So we undermine our position as Democrats, he says, if we are reaching out now for impeachment. So listen to me. If Cory Booker, he's as fierce an enemy of Donald Trump as exists. If Cory Booker says there is no basis for impeachment, he's counting on Mueller. Notice he's counting upon Mueller. He's realized what we know now. We got nothing on Trump that could be used to impeach him. We got zip. We got bupkis. We got nada. So he's counting on Mueller to come up with the stuff. He's going to come to a conclusion. He's going to bring out some facts, and we can base our actions upon the facts that Mueller brings forward. You just heard Michael Barone said that Mueller's got nothing. We are zooming down towards zero of any chance that they're going to find a smoking gun in the Mueller investigation. Now, here is clip 9. Here is CNN political analyst
to see here, but how much of it delves down and is a voting issue for people? I'm not sure.
I don't think it is, and I think if you look at successful Democrats who've run in these special elections or off years, they're not talking about Russia. Right. They know that when you look at the list of issues that voters care about, Russia is way down at the bottom.
You know, this is major problems for the Democrats because they have simply not been able to find anything that they can run on. They can't find a message that unites them. It's all anti-Trump, anti-Trump, anti-Trump. And now that this investigation has been going on for well over a year, the brightest minds in law enforcement, Mueller's got 17 really high-paid, smart lawyers probing this. Remember, these are the guys that can indict a ham sandwich. And they've been going after Trump now for well over a year, and they've got nothing on him. So the Democrats, their message was going to be impeach Trump, elect us, and we'll impeach Trump. They don't have anything now, and they don't have anything else to substitute. They were hoping this Russia thing would be the issue that they could campaign on. But Mara Eliason says, look, you talk to successful Democrats that are running in these important elections. They are not campaigning on Russia. They're not even talking about Russia. On the list of issues that voters care about, Russia is down at the bottom, meaning the Democrats are in bigger trouble than they're willing to admit when it comes to the November election. We'll be back with your phone calls, 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Give us a call.
A lot of folks ask me, how are people going to get saved in the tribulation if the church is gone and the Holy Spirit is gone? Well, these two witnesses are going to come and preach. And when we understand the message that they preach and all the miracles that go along with it, you won't have any trouble understanding how people get saved.
Join Dr. David Jeremiah for his series Escape the Coming Night, next time on Turning Point.
5:30 a.m. and 7 p.m. Central on American Family Radio.
Women and men alike find themselves in despair after an abortion. Every woman who had an abortion was for a short time a mother, every man a father. But afterwards, they're all people in pain, anger, sadness, relationship problems. These often accompany an abortion. But there is hope. Call 866-482-LIFE. Your call is confidential, and you'll be talking with someone who has already been where you are and found the way out. 866-482-LIFE.
Did you know George Washington, the father of our country, he loved being at home at Mount Vernon. In fact, he said he'd rather be at home at Mount Vernon than dining with all the princes and royalty of Europe. Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. We're going to Mount Vernon on our Spiritual Heritage Tour in September, and we'd love to have you join us for this very special time. Stephen McDowell of the Providence Foundation will be with us as we go all over our nation's capital. We'll go to the Capitol, the Library of Congress, the World War II Memorial, the Lincoln Memorial, all the places you want to see in our nation's capital. We'll see that, but we'll also go to Mount Vernon. Now, for all the information on this September tour, including a side trip to Williamsburg, Jamestown, and Yorktown, you can check it out at spiritualheritagetours.com. spiritualheritagetours.com for all the information on our September tours. And we'll see you then.
American Family Radio.
You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Brian Fisher.
Welcome back to Focal Point. Brian Fisher is my name. Love to take your calls. The number and the topic here is this whole business about the Trump collusion with Russia narrative, how that's completely falling apart, completely collapsing, how the Democrats, even the Democrats, are admitting that they don't have anything on Donald Trump. They can't pin anything on them. Their hopes of impeaching him, of having Mueller come up with a smoking gun that would enable them to run Trump out of town, that is not happening. Number to call is 888-589-8840. 888-589-8840 is the number to call. Love to chat with you, bring you on the program. 888-589-8840 is the number to call. And once again, that's 888-589-8840. Now, here is Gloria Borger. She's a card-carrying far leftist, and she's talking here about this lawsuit that the Democrats have filed. They filed it against everybody, against Trump. It's against WikiLeaks. Right? Just throwing everybody they can think into the mix. And this is a lawsuit where the Democrats, it's a desperate measure. I've got a column by Michael Goodman from the New York Post about the desperation of the Democratic Party. They're showing now that they've got nothing, that they recognize they've got nothing. They're in a panic and they're desperate. And one sign of desperation is this Hail Mary lawsuit. And here's what Gloria Borger, I mean, this woman is a card-carrying leftist. She wants Trump gone as much as anybody does. Here's what she has to say about this DNC lawsuit.
100% stunt. 100%.
Lay it out there.
Yeah. There's no. Yeah, they want to get in the act. Obviously, they want to keep the story moving. This is nothing new. Every Democrat, political Democrat, has been charging that the Trump campaign was in collusion with WikiLeaks, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
We know the DNC was hacked. We've been talking about this since the campaign, and honestly, it's just a way to raise money. And
that's what it is.
That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to raise money off of it.
So Gloria Borger saying, look, this stunt is this lawsuit is a 100% stunt. This is not an effort to get at the truth. This is not an effort to secure justice for anyone. This is just a fundraising stunt. So Gloria Borger blows the whistle on them. They just want to keep the story moving. So what does that tell you? If they're taking this action to keep the story moving, what does it tell you? It tells you that the story is dead in the water. And they're trying to pump some life and pump some air into something that's just stale and is stalled in its tracks. Just a transparent, according to Gloria Borger, fundraising scheme. Number to call to join the conversation is 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Let's grab a call from John in Carbondale, Illinois. John, welcome. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Brian, thank you for taking my call. I'll just say a few things and hang up and listen to you on the radio. I'll tell you, I think Bob Mueller and his other special counsel, I think there's something else that's being hidden here. I think he's just put in place to keep the heat off other people. I think this is all they are is hound dogs on the wrong trail. You know what I'm saying? And I'll hang up and listen to the response.
All right, John, I appreciate that. Yeah, hound dogs on the wrong trail, I think, is exactly right. You know, and they don't even have the scent. If they have hound dogs on this trail, they're wandering all over the forest looking to pick up this scent they're supposed to be tracking down. So, you know, and I don't know how much money they're going to spend. And I think about the guys like Paul Manafort. I mean, he's going to prison, and the case against him didn't have anything to do with Bob Mueller's charter. Bob Mueller's charter was Trump-Russia collusion in the 2016 election. Manafort got zinged and dinged and prosecuted and convicted for stuff that had to do with his business dealings with the Ukraine. Had nothing to do with Russia, had nothing to do with the campaign. So just another sign that Mueller has been given this fishing license. He's out there dredging up anything he can from the bottom of the swamp and then trying to make the targets of his animus look bad, look guilty, and hang something on them. All right, thanks for the call, John. I appreciate it. Let's take a call from Mary in Carbondale, Kansas. So we're making a run on the Carbondales here. First from Carbondale, Illinois from John. Now Mary in Carbondale, Kansas. Mary, what's on your mind?
Well, I just wanted to say that I think that all the time that the Democrats are wasting our taxpayer money trying to go after Trump when they know what they're doing is wrong. And I'm also sad that the Republicans have not stayed behind and watched his back. Some of them have scooted off and left him. And if they would just pull together and just fight for what's right for the United States, we would have a good government again. And I just feel like not all Democrats can be bad. I'm asking them, stand up and show that you are decent and are Christians, and you will go for what's good for our United States, not what's good for that left-wing party.
Yeah. All right, Mary, thank you, and that's a good call. And, you know, some of what you're talking about may actually be happening, although I think I'm a little more cynical about the motives. We have 3 Democrats now, for instance, that have come out to support Mike Pompeo. Let me see if I can grab the story about that. Mike, let's see. Joe Manchin from West Virginia has come out for Pompeo. Heidi Heitkamp from North Dakota. And another one came out today, and I think it was a female. Escapes my mind now off the top. But 3 Democrats have come out for Mike Pompeo now to become the next Secretary of State, which means he probably, despite the opposition and the no vote of Rand Paul, is probably going to get confirmed. Remember, the filibusters, the fake-a-busters have been busted up for nominations. They just need 51 votes. Rand Paul cuts them down to 50 because they wouldn't go to bat for Roy Moore. They kicked that one away. That just grinds my gears no end. They could have won that race in Alabama with Roy Moore. They believed these scurrilous lies about him, dumped them off the train, wouldn't come to his side. They could have won that thing and have 52 votes. They only got 51 now. Rand Paul drops them down to 50. So if you have the 3 Democrats, puts them up to 53, which means they've got enough to confirm him as Secretary of State. And apparently Mitch McConnell, to his credit, even though Pompeo may not make it out of committee because Rand Paul's on that committee, Mike Pompeo's nomination to be Secretary of State might not even make it out of the Senate Judiciary Committee, but Mitch McConnell has a card he can play where he can bring that issue directly to the Senate floor and call for a vote from the floor about what people on the floor think about the Pompeo nomination, can get that before the Senate and get that thing moving forward. And Rand Paul, just for your information, he's voting against Mike Pompeo because he thinks he's too much of a warmonger. Rand Paul essentially is an isolationist, and Mike Pompeo obviously believes in a little more engagement with those that are hostile to our interest in the Middle East and around the world. So Ron Paul wants an isolationist in that spot, and Mike Pompeo is not that. All right, let's get some more calls. Let's go to Russ in Woodbridge, Virginia. Russ, welcome. What's on your mind? Talk to me.
Well, I have two questions because I'm a rookie on politics. The first question is why the government of the United States allowed a special counsel to convene on a non-crime when they're supposed to only investigate high crimes. And the second, which I think is a great thing because they're wasting all this time, and I'm loving it. I hope they keep it up forever. And the second question I have is, why aren't we getting more good press and more support for all the wonderful things that Mike Pence is saying and doing? This guy, they want to get rid of Trump. They better be careful because they might get what they ask for. And I think Mike Pence is a bigger dog than Donald Trump is.
You know, and there are a lot of Democrats that think the same thing. They're just, some Democrats are hesitant on this. Let's get rid of Trump because waiting in the wings is Mike Pence. And Mike Pence is even stronger on the social issues and the moral issues than Donald Trump is. And he's almost impossible to dislike. So Democrats know that he represents a pretty significant threat to their agenda. And I'll tell you, Russ, there's really no good answers to why this special counsel even got started. You're exactly right. Donald Trump's been talking about this over the weekend. This special counsel investigation is illegal because the special counsel statute provides, it requires that a special counsel only be appointed when there's too obvious a conflict of interest in the Department of Justice for them to be impartial, and it identifies the specific crime to be investigated. Well, collusion is not a crime. You can search the law books, the criminal law books, U.S. Federal Code, from beginning to end. You will not find collusion in there anywhere. So there's no even legal basis for this investigation even to begin. It ought to be shut down. And I don't know why it hasn't been shut down. I don't know who, maybe could file some kind of legal complaint, get some judge to shut this thing down. But anyway, it doesn't even have any right even to exist. Let's go to Manus in Richmond, Virginia. Welcome. What's on your mind?
Well, Brian, thank you for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
I'm a strong Trump supporter. I pray for him every day. And then I would like to advise him not to fire Bob Mueller because it's going to hurt him politically, particularly in the midterm election. They will use it. The Democrats and Liberals, they will use it against him. So that will hurt him. So I advise him to let him be there until the election. And right after the election, he can call Rosenstein and tell him, sir, have you found anything? No. Then you have to shut this thing down. I give you 30 days to do that.
Yeah. And seriously. Trump, and you're right, Manus, Trump can do that because he's in charge of the executive branch. If he tells Mueller, he doesn't have to fire him. He just can tell him it's time to close this thing down. I'm ordering you, giving you a directive to close this thing down. All right, Manus, appreciate that. And I think Donald Trump is getting the kind of counsel that Manus is talking about. I think he's getting that from people around him. Look, there's no reason right now to mess with Mueller because Mueller is self-destructing. One of the principles in politics is if your enemy is destroying himself, just stay out of his way. Just let him implode and just don't get in his way. Don't give him any opportunities to let him have a way out. Lawrence and Jennings and Ron and Garland, if you guys will hang on, I will take you guys coming right out of the news break. Focal Point American Family Radio, Brian Fisher, be right back.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
How beautiful is the laugh of a baby. Some only believe that life begins when the baby is born, but that's just not so. Psalm 139:13 tells us that God knits us together in the womb at conception. The heartbeat begins in the womb, and the unborn baby is able to respond to sounds and touch. That's why it's our duty and privilege to fight for the sanctity of life. Thank you for joining that fight from AFA.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio, a ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Steve Pugh. There have been more terrorist attacks in Afghanistan. From Jerusalem, David Lee Miller reports.
It's been a bloody 48 hours in Afghanistan. In a series of attacks, 18 police and soldiers were killed on Monday alone. In near simultaneous assaults in the western part of the country, militants today launched attacks targeting army units and the police. The Taliban claim responsibility. In another incident, 4 police were killed in a firefight with the Taliban. A spokesman for the provincial governor there said 3 members of the Taliban were killed. A suicide bomb attack Sunday in Kabul killed 57 civilians and wounded more than 100. The victims were registering for national ID cards in preparation for parliamentary elections in October. In Jerusalem, David Lee Miller, Fox News.
A new digital ad campaign aims to show young Americans the benefits of tax reform and the importance of making it permanent. Chris Woodward has more.
The campaign comes from Generation Opportunity, where Policy Director David Barnes says they want to make sure young Americans understand the benefits that they've gotten from the tax reform bill and also the threat that they're seeing from people trying to take them away.
Either through efforts to undo parts of the tax bill or fight against efforts in Congress to make the individual tax cuts permanent.
One of the knocks from opponents of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act is that it benefits large businesses more than workers. But GenOp Press Secretary Jim Fellinger says the numbers show that this really could not be further from the truth.
You think about the numerous benefits in addition to the bonuses that all these companies are handing out, is the fact that the corporate tax rate is being lowered significantly, and that those benefits are ultimately going to work their way down to the employees, and that means young people who are raising families, just about everyone. So lowering that corporate tax rate does a lot for everyone.
Right. That means businesses will be reinvesting in their business to create more cool new products that we can all benefit with the extra money in our paychecks from tax cuts. So it's a great new benefit that I think will help everyone.
The digital ad campaign involves Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I'm Chris Woodward.
The U.S. government and advocates for persecuted Christians are rallying behind an American pastor who's been imprisoned in Turkey for his faith. Bill Bumpus reports.
North Carolina native Andrew Brunson is on trial in Turkey, charged with terrorism and espionage, despite his 23 years of service to the Turkish people. The conservative Christian group, the American Center for Law and Justice, has been lobbying for Brunson's release, but on day one of the trial, the Turkish judge refused to release the pastor and delayed the trial until May. The 50-year-old is facing 35 years in prison. ACLJ Senior Counsel C.C. Heil says this is a critical time for people to put the pressure on the president of Turkey to do the right thing.
So that is where our petition on our website that has already been signed by over 500,000 people is very important and critical. We need to show President Erdogan in numbers that the eyes of the world are watching this case, and he's not going to get by with that.
Heil tells AFN they appreciate the unprecedented support that the Trump administration has been providing.
We cannot thank our government enough for the efforts that they are doing. It just seems that Turkey has dug their heels in, and we're probably going to have to up the pressure and push harder.
The petition urging Brunson's release is available at aclj.org. I'm Bill Bumpus.
Small satellites the size of a laptop could soon play a big role in the U.S. Army's plans to win ground wars.
Vice President Mike Pence told the Space Symposium that as space becomes increasingly crowded, the chance of accidents goes up, citing a collision between an American satellite and an inactive Russian spacecraft in 2009.
Sent nearly 3,000 pieces of debris into orbit, putting at risk our satellites and those of us here on Earth who depend on them.
Accidents like that are a real threat to U.S. soldiers who rely on satellites in battle. The military is developing the nano satellites, which could compensate for damage to bigger satellites. In Washington, Rachel Sutherland, Fox News.
American Family News is online at onenewsnow.com and download the One News Now mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
For well over a century, secular progressives in the United States have worked to alter the very nature of our republic.
Progressives had no problem with saying we can leave the Declaration of Independence behind. For the progressives, there are no longer any God-given natural rights.
AFA Executive Vice President Ed Vitagliano helps you understand the progressive threat to the American Republic. Get your copy of this powerful DVD from the AFA Cultural Institute at afastore.net.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged. An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Howdy, welcome back to the second hour of Focal Point, American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. The program is Focal Point, home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio. You won't be surprised to hear this. The GLAAD, that's one of the major homosexual activist lobbying groups, used to stand for the Gay and Lesbian Anti-something or other League or Discrimination or whatever. Gays and lesbians against, I don't know, some kind of discrimination. Anyway, major, they just go by GLAAD now, 2 A's. They made a bunch of awards at their major award gala this year and made it clear that they are indebted to CBS, ABC, and NBC for pushing the radical homosexual agenda. They couldn't stop giving out awards to these major networks. 4 out of 5 of the media awards for outstanding TV journalism went to ABC, NBC, and CBS. 3 out of the 5 nominations for outstanding TV journalism news magazine went to ABC's 2020, ABC's Nightline, CNN's Anderson Cooper 360. So if you ever wondered whose side the media is on, you need wonder no more. Now, I want to draw your attention to a column that I have up at afa.net. This is where you can find it, afa.net. And I want to talk about this because it's a very important issue. This is just a court case that right now is at the state appeals court level in Texas. So it hasn't even gotten to the Texas State Supreme Court. Hasn't gotten into the federal system yet, but that's where this thing is headed. It's dangerous. I wanted to make you aware of this in hopes that we can kind of shortstop this thing before it gets out of the barn. State appeals court in Texas, of all places. Again, their legislature may be conservative. Their voters may be conservative, but they got Looney Tune liberal judges just like everybody else does. And the state appeals court ruled that a 2015 revenge porn law, this is a law that prohibits angry lovers from posting intimate photographs of their exes online. And this ruling from the appeals court says that this law is too broad, and get this, it infringes on freedom of speech. I submit to you that this ruling, that this law, this revenge porn law that bans revenge porn online, the notion that this is too broad and that it infringes on freedom of speech is ridiculous. It's absurd. And it's flatly, and it is egregiously, and it is dangerously wrong. And the reality is, if we're looking at the Founders' Constitution, that is the Constitution that the Founders gave to us. There is no right anywhere in that Constitution to post nude photos or partially nude photos of anybody online, whether the poster is a vengeful, scorned lover or a pornographer. There simply is no right to post this kind of content online. Here's an excerpt from the article. The law originated from complaints from women who said they felt violated and abused when their exes posted naked or sexual images online without their consent. One woman from Nederland, Holly Toops, found dozens of photos of herself online, organized a class action suit against the website where these photographs appeared. Quote, I was kind of numb at first, and when I scrolled to the bottom, it showed how many people had viewed it, she told the Texas Tribune. I saw that it was thousands, and with all these comments, they were saying horrible things. That's when I got scared and felt humiliated, knowing that as I was looking, so were thousands of other people. So this does active, positive harm to people. Now, what the First Amendment protects, ladies and gentlemen, this is important to understand, what the First Amendment protects is political speech, not pictures of nude people. Again, the First Amendment's protection for speech applies to political speech, not to pictures of people without their clothes on. First Amendment was written by the founders, remember, at a time when the Crown had sought to suppress any speech that was critical of the Crown or the King or in support of independence for the colonies. So the founders had fought a long, bloody, and costly war against the mightiest army in the world just so that those who lived on American soil would have the freedom to express their political views without the risk of punishment. They didn't fight that war so that people would have the right to show pictures of naked people to anybody. That's not why they went to war. Now, speech in the founders' vocabulary means exactly what it means when we use it. It means words that are coming out of your mouth. To claim protection under the First Amendment, you actually have to be saying something. A picture, by definition, is not speech. Now, this is where linguistic sleight of hand has corroded our understanding of the Constitution. Somewhere along the line, somebody substituted the word expression in our discussion of the First Amendment for the word speech. Now, whereas speech means spoken words, the definition of expression, which they've substituted for speech, you might think it's the same, but it's not. The definition of expression includes words like show, exhibition, or illustration. These are words that deal primarily with visual communication, not spoken. So this corrupt and false substitution has opened the door for untethered judges to begin finding imaginary constitutional protections for things like pornography, things the founders would have regarded as abominable. Now, there's no use in seeking refuge, by the way, under the First Amendment's protection for freedom of the press either. They say, well, what about freedom of the press? This, again, freedom of the press deals specifically and only with political points of view expressed in print. The Crown had made a zealous effort to shut down newspapers and handbills and pamphlets which criticized the king and argued for independence. The founders were determined that the new nation would be a place where an independent press would feature robust political debate with no interference from the central government. This protection included protection for political cartoons, by the way, which were visual to be sure, but again, these cartoons were part of the public debate over political issues. Now, the Texas Constitution, which actually ought to be the only constitution under discussion here, is no help for revenge pornographers either. This is what the Texas Constitution says. It makes it actually worse for revenge pornographers. It says, quote, every person shall be at liberty to speak, write, or publish his opinions on any subject, being responsible for the abuse of that privilege. In other words, they recognize that this privilege is a privilege that can be abused. And if people abuse freedom of speech or freedom of the press, they must be held accountable for an abuse of the privilege. And I would say whatever else is true, there's no question that publishing nude photos of a former lover in order to embarrass them is a gross abuse of that privilege. Now, because the ruling is from a state appeals court, it only applies to about a dozen counties right now in northeast Texas. Let's hope and pray that this contagion is contained before it spreads and contaminates the rest of the country. We'll be right back with more content. You are listening to Focal Point on American Family Radio. My name is Brian Fisher. Program is Focal Point, home of high-definition radio. We'll be right back after these messages. Stay tuned.
The influence of media is so very powerful over a person.
American Family Association and the family of Anna Bright want to warn you about the Netflix program 13 Reasons Why.
I really feel in my heart with all my soul that that show contributed to her passing.
After binge-watching Season 1 of 13 Reasons Why, 14-year-old Anna Bright committed suicide in the same manner depicted on the show.
To portray suicide, first of all, as an option is not a good thing. To portray it graphically, it leaves you vulnerable to the enemy's attack, which I think it definitely did for our daughter.
She took a permanent solution to a temporary situation.
Help protect our teens by signing the AFA petition urging Netflix to pull Season 1 and cancel the upcoming Season 2 of 13 Reasons Why. You can see Anna's story and sign the petition at afa.net. That's afa.net.
You get the soil ready. You put the seeds in and then you water it.
How do you plant a garden?
I don't know. You pray that God will give you a good harvest. Then you have to work it to get all the weeds away. And then God brings the plants.
Planting a garden takes planning, hard work, and God's blessing. So does creating a lasting legacy for the people and charities that mean the most to you. The AFA Foundation is here to help you sow the financial seeds God has blessed you with in order for them to blossom for generations to come. We do this by offering free consultation and assistance in the areas of charitable gift annuities, estate planning, will and trust planning, and bequests. To learn more, call 800-326-4543, extension 345, 800-326-4543, extension 345, or visit afafoundation.net.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio.
Hi, welcome back to Focal Point, American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. Our intern, Kelly, kept us up to speed on the capture of the guy that shot up the Waffle House, and again, had to use his bare hands to disarm the guy because it's a gun-free zone. This is where all of the shootings take place, in gun-free zones. Got a story I'll talk about in a little while. The CDC did a study on this a number of years ago, and they determined that there are far more uses of guns for defensive purposes than to commit crimes, like 2.46 million times in the year they looked at, 2013 or so. Guns were used for defensive purposes. So that's the primary use for guns is to defend themselves. Even if you just got it, somebody means you harm, they see you got a gun, they turn and walk away. That is a defensive use of a gun. So that guy is in custody now. I want to welcome to our studio Fred Jackson, who is our news director here at One News Now, American Family News. And Fred, we've got an update from Canada, unfortunately, which is your home territory. Talk to us about what we've got here.
Well, this sounds a little similar to a couple of incidents that we have seen here in the United States and in France. At this hour, there is one man in custody in Toronto. Earlier this afternoon on what's called Yonge Street in Toronto. Yonge Street probably runs about 20 or 30 miles from Lake Ontario back north, straight back north. Toronto's a city of about 4 or 5 million people. And on the corner of Yonge Street and Finch, not far from where I used to live, actually, in Toronto when I was spending my time there in broadcasting, according to eyewitnesses, a guy in a rented Ryder van began mowing down people on a sidewalk. Now, the first reports we have anywhere from 8 to 10 people that were hit. But I was just watching a live interview with a guy who saw all of this. He claims there are anywhere 30 to 40 people that may have been hit In other words, in the way he described it, one person was hit, guy backs up and continues to mow down people on a sidewalk.
Wow.
So the idea that this was a drunk driver, I don't think so. The idea that the guy was unconscious and this van went all by itself, I don't think so. As I say, I just saw a shot of a guy being arrested. The driver, he's been identified as the driver, and they got him over the hood of a truck, and they were handcuffing him. So this, as I say, this sounds very similar to the incident in New York City. Remember the guy, Muslim terrorist, arrested or rented a van, mowed down. Were there 8 guys? They were visiting from South America somewhere.
From out of the country.
Out of the country.
Tourists
and then
in America.
You had the incident in France back a couple of years ago. Guy rent a big truck, mowed down 60, 70 people in that case.
Yeah. Then they had the Berlin Christmas market. Same deal. Taking a rented truck.
Same
and
deal.
Through
So
a crowd of people.
the modus operandi here at this moment sounds very similar to these other terrorist attacks that we have seen. There's a lot of details we don't know at this point. I'm just looking at a picture of this Ryder van with the front end smashed in because he hit so many people. Wow. One of the victims, according to this eyewitness, was a lady walking a little baby in a stroller.
Wow!
It's a beautiful sunny day in Toronto. Lots of people out walking around. We'll get you more details as the afternoon goes on.
All right. Well, thank you, Fred. And are they using the word terrorism, the Canadian authorities?
There are a couple of the eyewitnesses that are using the word terrorism.
What about the authorities?
Authorities, not yet. They are always the last.
And they've not released the identity or the name of this guy, right?
They have not.
Yeah, they never do. That's always, you got to drag that out of them with a team of
we'll look for
2-ton
that.
trucks.
Yeah, we'll look
All
for
right. Okay, Fred, thank you very much. I appreciate that. So again, this is what we're seeing from the Religion of Peace. That's our Religion of Peace update for today. And it's happening all over Europe. Not too long ago in Europe, an 85-year-old woman was attacked by 2 Muslims. 85-year-old Jewish woman. She was stabbed 11 times and set on fire by 2 Muslims. Religion of Peace. More than 300 French dignitaries and stars have signed a manifesto denouncing a new anti-Semitism marked by Islamist radicalization. Finally, somebody in France is saying the words. They're saying, look, we have anti-Semitism. It's virulent. Jewish people are not only being hated, they're being assaulted, and they're being murdered in our streets. And this is being done by Islamists, those who are radical believers and followers of the religion of Muhammad. The declaration these 300 dignitaries have signed says this, quote, in our recent history, 11 Jews have been assassinated and some tortured by radical Islamists just because they were Jewish. Now, in the Czech Republic, I can't even tell you the details of this. It's family radio. But it pictures Jesus in this play, and the play is sold out. It pictures Jesus in connection with a Muslim woman, and it pictures Jesus committing an unspeakable act against this Muslim woman. Not going to tell you what the act is. You can probably imagine it. But this is the religion of peace. And there's not even an outcry over this. You can commit blasphemy against Christianity, against Christ. You can offend Christians with impunity. Nobody says anything, but you offend Islam, you have the same scenario. You're going to have everybody all over you. So this place sold out in the Czech Republic. Angela Merkel in Germany, she's denouncing, quote, the dismaying, quote, rise, end quote, of anti-Semitism among Arab refugees. Well, it didn't rise. It's always been there. Angela Merkel has just been willfully blind to the true nature of Islam. And they're concerned now in Germany. It's too late to do anything about this, but they're concerned about Arab immigrants who bring profoundly anti-Jewish sentiments to their new home. So this is anti-Semitism on steroids. And what Angela Merkel says, this is where things are at in Germany, ladies and gentlemen. No nursery, no school, no synagogue can be left without police protection. Why? because of Muslim immigrants. No other reason. That's the religion of peace. You know, people are telling us now that Hezbollah has radicalized thousands of Latin Americans, thousands of them in Latin America. So we're used to thinking of Hezbollah as a threat over there in Lebanon and the Middle East, a threat against Israel. They are a threat in Latin America, and they're exporting them to the United States. Here's a story from freebeacon.com that Iranian-backed militants are operating across the United States, mostly unfettered, as sleeper cell agents poised to launch a large-scale attack on the American homeland. And, of course, behind Hezbollah, funding Hezbollah, is Iran. So that's why these sleeper cells are backed by Iran. So they're here, sleeper cells all over America, according to these sources. In the French city of Orléans, the police have finally been required to take action against Muslim worshipers because they have been using public streets for years to pray. And residents are finally complaining, look, I can't get to my apartment. I can't get to my house. Can't get to my home. And it's obviously a threat to public safety. As a fire, there's some kind of accident, requires police response. The streets are just absolutely crowded with Muslim men who are praying, and the police are finally now responding to this to keep the streets safe again. It's been illegal for years, but the police have done nothing out of this perverse political correctness. Speaking of North Korea and international affairs just for a second, let's grab clip number, back to the end of the rundown, clip number 11. This is Representative Lee Zeldin, a Republican from New York, talking about what Donald Trump has gotten done. Remember, the dictator of North Korea is talking now about denuclearizing the entire peninsula. Has met with the president of South Korea. Now they're going to meet possibly with President Trump to discuss getting rid of nukes on the entire peninsula. Here's what Lee Zeldin, a Republican from New York, has to say.
You know what's frustrating is seeing people, it's okay to, if you want to oppose you don't want to vote for the president last time, maybe you won't vote for him next time, but to actually root against President Trump with this, to be actively trying to obstruct Mike Pompeo getting confirmed, all the Democrats who are opposing him for no good reason. But it's almost like they're taking North Korea's side. We've seen it where sometimes they're caught rooting against the economy going well, or rooting for Iran against the United States.
So Representative Lee Zeldin says, look, if you're resisting Mike Pompeo, you're complaining about what Donald Trump is doing with North Korea, you're kind of rooting for the bad guys. And it's a pretty phenomenal thing. In fact, it's so phenomenal. Here is CNN correspondent Will Ripley, clip 12. He's regularly reported from inside North Korea before, so he's seen it with his own eyes what's going on in North Korea, talking here with Wolf Blitzer about this peace initiative that Donald Trump has engineered. Mike Pompeo has helped with this. Mike Pompeo flew there, met with Kim Jong-un. Now here's Will Ripley. He knows a lot about what's going on in North Korea. Listen to what he says.
This is an extraordinarily significant development and, frankly, a huge win for President Trump going into these discussions, this potential summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. I want to read for you a quote from a North Korean source that I just spoke with on the phone minutes ago. He told me, quote, finally Kim Jong-un has decided to open up. This is a new chapter for the DPRK. He has committed himself to the path of denuclearization and will now focus solely on economic growth and improving the national economy. Wolf, I have to say, I am really almost speechless here at the pace at which North Korea has done this U-turn. And this all started with Donald Trump agreeing to sit down for a summit with Kim Jong-un. I've been speaking with diplomatic sources over the last week who were optimistic, believing that President Trump might be the one U.S. president who can figure out a way to break through to North Korea. And this announcement from North Korean state media does confirm a dramatic shift in North Korean policy, a commitment apparently to engage ahead of these historic talks. It is really extraordinary development.
So that's a confirmed leftist from CNN, Will Ripley, saying, look, this is extraordinarily significant. It's a huge win for President Trump. I'm almost speechless here at how fast this thing has moved. It's an extraordinary development. It didn't start with Donald Trump agreeing to sit down for a summit with Kim Jong-un. It began with Donald Trump telling this little tin-pot dictator, we're going to bomb you back to the Stone Age if you threaten us. We'll be back after this.
The following is not an actor, but a real-life story from Trinity Debt Management.
I had a lot of credit card debt and I couldn't pay my bills. I was feeling so bad. I got to a point where I needed some help. So I reached out and contacted Trinity.
If you're in debt and you need help, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813 to talk to a certified counselor.
They were able to take all of my different payments and put them all together.
Trinity will consolidate your accounts into one easy-to-manage monthly payment, put a stop to late fees and over-limit charges, reduce your interest, and possibly improve your credit score. You'll save thousands.
And they were actually able to work with my creditors. I've been able to pay off close to $15,000 in the last 18 months.
If your debt has you down, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813.
My name is Stephanie, and I'm debt-free for keeps.
1-800-788-1813.
Steve Tiber with 8 Days of Hope. You know, we just got back from Southeast Houston. We were there from March 10th to March 24th. We did our first ever back-to-back trips. That's right, 8 Days of Hope 14 and 15. Saw 4,692 volunteers come from all over the country. In fact, from all over the world. And God allowed us to help 844 families rebuild their homes. Some got brand new roofs. Some picked out brand new kitchen sets. We put flooring in, insulation, drywall. It wasn't just the rebuilding work that was done, because about $10.4 million of work was done for free, but it was the lives that were impacted for Jesus. We had volunteers and homeowners alike fall on their knees and say yes to our Father in heaven. Thank you so much, and that's why we do 8 Days of Hope. Hey, if you're interested in being part of 8 Days of Hope, just go to our website, 8daysofhope.com, click on Get Involved, submit your email address, and we'll contact you anytime we go anywhere to love and serve those in need.
American Family Radio. You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. Video segments of today's program will be posted at afr.net and on the Focal Point Facebook page. You'll also find the best collection of Brian's resources on our Facebook page. If you're on Twitter, be among the very first every morning to find out what the day's show will be about. Just follow Brian at Brian J. Fisher.
Brian J. Fisher.
Brian Fisher here. Welcome back. Focal Point, the program, the home of ethanol-free radio. Nothing but high-octane jet fuel here on this program. By the way, I've got a story here that not only are they talking about denuclearizing, but that North and South Korea are preparing to announce that they may permanently end the military conflict between the two countries. They have been officially at war since 1950. In 1953, they declared a truce. That's not a peace treaty, so they still technically are at war. You've got a heavily fortified, demilitarized zone separating them. Remember, we've got about roughly 30,000 troops securing the border between North and South Korea. So if they were to declare an end to that war and be at peace, that would be phenomenal. You talk about an accomplishment that would be worthy of a Nobel Peace Prize for Donald Trump. That would be it. Don't hold your breath. Not going to happen. China, understand, has developed a new Guam killer nuclear missile, they claim, that can reach that U.S. territory and destroy aircraft carriers. I just got to tell you, if they start threatening Guam, they're going to have to deal with me, because that was the birthplace of my bride, so they're going to have to answer to me. They even think about doing something to Guam. Let's see, where do we want to go from here? Whole stack. Oh, it's a story that's on the stack, because I already put I always put my Friday stories on top of the stack. But this is a story from Penn State University. And they have an outing club, a campus outing club. They go on outings. Yeah. And Penn State has barred the campus outing club from going on outings because they are too dangerous. Their risk management study determined that these outside trips are too dangerous. It's like these students are like in first grade. So they're saying, look, you can't go hiking, too dangerous. You can't go canoeing, it's too dangerous. You can't go kayaking, too dangerous. Can't go trail building, too dangerous. You can't go camping, too risky.
Wow.
According to Penn State University, the spelunking club, those people who like to hike around in caves, they can't do it. And scuba diving club, they can't go scuba diving. They're barred from engaging in the group's activities. So I don't know. This is like snowflakes that need to be wrapped in bubble wrap, I guess.
I think they can just disband that whole club
Just
thing.
shut down
you know?
the whole extracurricular activity.
That's everything that they do, right?
Cotton pick, you can get hurt bowling.
Yeah.
Why don't they ban that? I mean, I hit my ankle one time with a bowling ball.
And
That's
it hurts,
dangerous.
yeah.
Well, maybe not for most people. For athletes such as myself, it can be dangerous. All right, let's see what we want to do. I don't know. We've got a couple of sound bites. Let's explore these. I want to play the first one. This is George Stephanopoulos. And, you know, the interesting thing is here, I'm going to have you listen to George Stephanopoulos, but I want you to listen carefully to what he admits. This is really kind of amazing, and it's kind of startling how honest he is here. So let's listen to George Stephanopoulos trying to answer a question about the modern media.
But the question there is, are you writing to make something break through, or are you writing what you think the news is? And that is a question that I think we all have to ask going into the next
And I think
election.
that's a big. I think it's a big question for all of us. And you look back and say, listen, there were things done wrong with emails. There's no question about that. But there's something structurally in the media where we have to equalize everything. If you point out a wrongdoing on one side, you have to point out a wrongdoing on the other, and they automatically become equivalent, and that isn't always fair.
So what Stephanopoulos is saying, if we're going to be newscasters, we have to cheat. We have to be unfair to people. Because if we included fairness and balance, it wouldn't be the newscast that we want to bring you. We want to make the right look bad. So if there's a story that makes the right look good, we're not going to run it because we have to cheat in order to keep things fair. That's what George Stephanopoulos is saying. Pretty remarkable statement. Now, this next one is, I just love this thing. And the predicate for this, the reason and it's a long clip. It's one of the longer clips. It's about a minute longer than we typically run, but I didn't want you to miss any of this exchange between KellyAnne Conway and Dana Bash yesterday on CNN. KellyAnne Conway, as you know, is a strategist for President Trump. She was his campaign manager. She was the first woman ever to head up a successful presidential campaign. Did you hear the left throwing her any accolades for that? No, you did not. Now, another part of the backstory here that I want you to keep in mind is that remember what the left said. I think it was Hillary said this. Wasn't it? When she said, look, part of the reason that I lost is these poor Republican women, they only vote the way their husbands let them vote. They're under the thumb of their husbands, and so they only do and think the things that their husbands allow them to say, and that's why I lost, because Republican women are such Minnie Mouses, they're so mousy, and Republican husbands are such Nazi thugs. That's why I lost. So with that as a backstory, let's listen to this exchange between KellyAnne Conway and Dana Bash. And KellyAnne Conway's husband has posted tweets that are critical of things that Donald Trump has done. That's the other part of the backstory that you need to know here. Let's listen.
Number one, that, again, that woman who lost the election, whose name I never see on TV anymore, is wrong. That women, I think she said white women, have to listen to the men in their life to form their own political opinions. Wrong again, lady. Number two, it's fascinating to me that CNN would go there, but it's very good for the whole world to have just witnessed that it's now that it's now fair game what how people's spouses and significant others may differ with them. I'm really surprised, but in some ways relieved and gratified to see that. That should really be fun.
No, I actually, first of all, I would ask you that if you were a man and
No,
your
you
wife
wouldn't.
were 1,000% I would.
No.
And it's not
There's
about
a
that.
different standard.
It's about questioning, publicly questioning what you are doing for a living with regard to your boss. And it has nothing to do with your gender.
No, and it has nothing to do with my spouse. And
right, that's why I'm just asking.
Oh no! You just brought him into this. So this ought to be fun moving forward, Dana.
Okay.
We're now going to talk about other people's spouses and significant others just because they either work in the White House or at CNN. Are we going to do that? Because you just went there.
Yes.
CNN just went there. Look, differences of opinions.
By the way, this isn't critical. I'm just asking about.
Of course it was. It was meant to harass and embarrass. But let me just tell you something.
Absolutely not.
Let me just tell you something. By definition, spouses have a difference of opinion when adultery is happening.
More.
By definition, spouses have a difference of opinion when one is, draining the joint bank account to support things that maybe the other disagrees with. So this is a fascinating cross the Rubicon moment, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Well, that certainly was not intended to cross any Rubicon. It was actually intended to be somewhat lighthearted about the fact that we are all grown-ups who have different opinions, but I'm sorry that you took it that.
You said, I've got to ask you a question that's on everybody's mind.
It is.
All right, so Dana Bash starts prodding KellyAnne Conway about tweets that her husband had posted. And remember, the backstory here is that Republican women, like KellyAnne Conway, this is the meme by Hillary Clinton. This is what she announced. This is her explanation for why she lost. So this is the most prominent Democrat in America saying, this is why I lost, because Republican women cannot think for themselves. They are under the thumbs of their husbands. They only do and say what their husbands allow them to say, what their husbands direct them to say, what their husbands direct them to believe. They have no independence. They do not think for themselves. And here is KellyAnne Conway with a husband that openly disagrees with her. And what does KellyAnne Conway do? She goes right ahead and keeps believing and saying exactly the same thing. She's not under George's thumb. She's her own person. She thinks for herself. So that's another little Democrat narrative just blown completely out of the saddle here by KellyAnne Conway. She is just absolutely terrific. She really knows how to think on her feet. Well, let me just go through some stuff here. We got a couple of minutes, and let's see if I can find something interesting. I'm just kind of looking at my stack and seeing what I can find here that might be fun to talk about. Oh, here's a good one. Here is a good one. Remember, we had this, Starbucks is closing down all 8,000 of their stores to talk about racism, right? Because these two black guys went in there, sat down. They didn't order any coffee because they were waiting for somebody. And the guy running the Starbucks store said, well, you got to buy something or you got to leave. They wouldn't leave, so they called the cops. Now, David Clark, the sheriff, former Milwaukee County sheriff, says, hey, remember that time in Philadelphia, this was another Philadelphia Starbucks, where they refused to allow a police officer to use the restroom. They told him it was for paying customers. Do you remember Starbucks closing 8,000 stores for sensitivity training for the police? I don't either. Let's see. I don't want to do that one. I got to do that Second Amendment story. That'll be worth doing. I can probably squeeze that one in about the. Oh, here's another one. Let me do this one before I get to the other one. Everybody, and even we have a lot of listeners to this program, think that pot is harmless. It's just a way to relax and kind of ease your stress. And I want to be clear. I'm not talking about medical marijuana. Not talking about that. I'm perfectly open to the possibility that there may be medical conditions for which marijuana may provide some prescription relief, like opioids can provide prescription relief for some kinds of pain. So this is not about medicinal use of marijuana. This is about recreational use of marijuana. This is a story from the UK. Cannabis, that's the fancy word for pot, is responsible for 91% 91% of the cases where teenagers end up being treated for drug addiction. So you go to a drug treatment place, 91% of the teenagers that are in there are going to be in there because they're trying to kick their addiction to pot. Now, there's a particularly strong version of it that's out there in the market, high-potency herbal cannabis known as skunk. That word ought to tell you all you need to know about whether it's a good idea to use it or not. And it's causing more young people to seek treatment. Much, much stronger than your father's pot, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be back with your phone calls. Stay with us.
Abraham Hamilton III.
God put us in this world at this time to be salt and light. We don't fold because of the darkness that we're facing. This is not the first time in the world's history that it's gotten dark. God has called you and I to be his ambassadors, even in this dark moment.
Tune in to the Hamilton Corner, weekday afternoons at 5 Central on American Family Radio.
Thursday, May 3rd is the National Day of Prayer. Here's Dr. Ronnie Floyd, National Day of Prayer President.
Our heart is one thing ultimately, that we mobilize unified public prayer for America, that at least on one day a year, we do everything we can to mobilize people to praying for our country.
The American Family Association encourages you to meet with other Christians at your City Hall from 12:20 to 12:40, Thursday, May 3rd, the National Day of Prayer.
Hi, I'm J.J. Jasper. Do you know what a snail says riding on a turtle's back? Whee! That's how I feel about being at this year's Fishbowl Retreat. I'll be sharing some laughs and encouragement with you, and my wife Melanie will be speaking as well.
The annual AFA Pastors and Wife Fishbowl Retreat is coming October 9th through the 11th, and already the event is filling up. Our hosts will be Pastor Bert Harper of Exploring the Word and his wife Jan. And our guest speakers will be AFR morning personality J.J. Jasper and his wife Melanie. Come refresh, renew, and relax. The AFA Fishbowl Retreat will be held at Linden Valley Conference Center in Linden, Tennessee. Registration is limited to the first 35 couples. Register soon by calling 800-326-4543 extension 300 or visit repairingthefoundations.net.
Come join us at the annual AFA Fishbowl Retreat, October the 9th through the 11th.
American Family Radio. You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. Focal Point, Brian Fisher.
Howdy, welcome back. Number to call if you want to join our conversation here in the last segment is 888-589-8840. Go ahead and punch it in your cell phones. You'll have it ready all the time. 888-589-8840. Talk about all the stuff we've talked about in this second hour. So welcome to weigh in on any issue we've talked about in the program today, for that matter. 888-589-8840. On the topic of the Second Amendment, while you are calling in, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention released a study back in, it's not supposed to do that. The executive producer doesn't want me to make that clucking sound with my, anyway, the CDC has this study that's been done, but they've kept it under wraps. Finally resurfaced here. And according to the Centers for Disease Control is like the Vatican for the left. This is their ultimate source of authority about all things medical. And this CDC study indicated that there were, from 1996 to 1998, there were 2.46 million defensive gun uses in the U.S. every year. Each year, 2.46 million defensive gun uses every single year. The mainstream media keeps trying to tell you there's only about 100,000 of these by now. With a growing population, we got to be up over 3 million defensive gun uses a year. So guns are used exactly as the founders intended them in the Second Amendment to be, a means of protection. Here's a county you might want to think about moving to, Effingham, Illinois. You can't get a gun in Illinois, but if you have one, if you move to Effingham County, you will find that it is a sanctuary county for gun owners. So they have declared that their city fathers or county fathers, by an 8-1 vote, said we're going to make this a sanctuary county like they would for undocumented immigrants. So we flipped the script on it. So there it is, Effingham County in Illinois, a sanctuary county for gun owners. One last thing before we go to the phones, 888-589-8840. One of the memes out there is that CO2 is a pollutant. CO2 is bad for the environment. CO2 causes global warming. It's terrible. It's a pollutant. Well, it's not. We've said it over and over again that CO2 is plant food. And now we have an international team of 32 authors from 24 institutions in 8 countries just published a study. Listen to the title of it, quote, "Greening of the Earth and Its Drivers," end quote, in the peer-reviewed journal Nature Climate Change, showing significant greening of 1/4 to 1/2 of the Earth's vegetated lands. They're getting this data from satellite sensors of over the past 33 years. The greening represents an increase in leaves on plants and trees. Listen to this. We were able to tie the greening largely to the fertilizing effect of rising atmospheric CO2 concentration. Rising atmospheric CO2 concentration. Like I've always said, CO2 is our friend. It is plant food. These scientists, enormous greening. In fact, the greening over the past 33 years is equivalent to adding a green continent 2 times the size of the mainland United States. Ladies and gentlemen, CO2 is our friend. The more CO2 there is in the environment, the better it is for our botanical friends. All right, let's go to the phones, 888-589-8840. Let's begin with Mary in Commerce, Texas. Mary, what's on your mind? Talk to me.
My comment today is after I heard about the raid of Trump's lawyers and the lawyer-client invasion.
Yes, ma'am.
Why can't the Justice Department, FBI, raid the halls of Congress and confiscate the records for the last 20 years to find out about the hush money that was $17 million used to pay for the Congress people who are probably still serving in our Congress? To me, that's a worse offense than anything that's been going on with the Mueller investigation.
Well, there you go, Maria, $17 million, and we know that it was spent covering up sex crimes of congressmen. And Mary wants to know, why aren't they going in there with a subpoena and pouncing on all their records? They can go after Cohen like that, invade his home and all that. Why can't they do the same thing in Congress? Don't have a good answer for you, Mary, but I do know that search of Michael Cohen's records, that was hinky, and it was not in accordance with the Fourth Amendment, because the Fourth Amendment says you have to identify the stuff specifically that you want to seize. This is the Fourth Amendment. No warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. They got to identify exactly what they want to collect. They can't just go in there and take everything. That's a general warrant. What they did, went there and took everything. You can't do that. You have to identify specifically what it is that you want to take. In fact, general warrants were issued by the Crown back in the colonial days, and that's the reason we have a Fourth Amendment. The Founding Fathers said, look, the UK would enter these, would issue these general warrants, let their goons go in and ransack a house looking for anything they wanted, trying to find something suspicious in there. Didn't have to specify what they were looking for, just go in there and ransack the place and look for it. And they said, we're not going to allow it to happen. We'll allow searches to take place, but it's got to be under probable cause. Oath's got to be involved. A search warrant has to identify exactly what is going to be taking. You can't. I mean, what happened to Michael Cohen, in my mind, is a general warrant. That's verboten, according to the Founding Fathers. All right, Very good call. I appreciate that. Let's grab a call from Barbara in Pineville, Louisiana. Barbara in Pineville, what's on your mind? Talk to me.
I just want to say thanks for taking my call, and I could talk to you all day. I want to say hooray for Mary. That would that would be a good idea if any judge would allow it. But specifically, I can't talk, what I called you about is us women in the Republican Party that are so stupid. You know, our husbands tell us, I guess, when to eat, when to sleep, and how to do everything we do. And it's so sad that we're so stupid. But guess who put Trump in office? You know, it was a Southern deplorable, ignorant men and women in the Republican Party.
Yeah.
But I just want to say also that I am a strong constitutionalist, and Amendment 2 is vital. I'm 80 years old. I have my gun, and nobody better try to take it away.
Well, I'll tell you something.
At least one person will have a bullet right between their eyes.
Well, I'll tell you something, Barbara. It ain't going to be me. I'm leaving you the heck alone. And everybody that's smart will do the same thing. All right, Barbara, appreciate the call. Thank you for that. Let's go and grab a call from Kelly in King George, Virginia. Kelly, welcome. What's on your mind?
Hi, Brian.
Hey.
I just wanted to ask a question.
Yes, ma'am.
And what is it that Nikki Haley and Sarah Hugsby and KellyAnne Conway all have in common?
Well, let's see. What do they all have in common? They have husbands that they don't allow to dictate their political views. Is that what you were going to say?
Absolutely. They are all strong women that are in our government or working for our government and our people, because Donald Trump has seen something in them that has, put them in places that really have a great effect. And it just irritates me for the fact that the women who say that they are feminists, the women who say that they are for female power and more people need to be in power, but they don't recognize the ones that are in power because they don't fit their agenda.
Yeah. Well, that's a great call, Kelly, and I thought about that earlier today. Donald Trump's is constantly slammed for being a misogynist. He has KellyAnne Conway as his chief strategist. He has Nikki Haley representing us at the UN. These are very smart, independent thinking women. So that whole thing it's just so much bloviation and hot air and just gas. All right, Kelly, great call. Thank you. James, Greenville, Texas. What's on your mind, James? Talk to me.
Hi, Brian.
Hey.
Yeah, you mentioned your bride is from Guam.
Yes, she was born in Guam.
Yeah, well, my parents served during World War II in Guam. My dad was a major in the Air Force, and my mom was a civilian servant or civil servant as a base librarian. And my dad, unfortunately, is deceased, but my mom is 94 years old and still going strong.
Yeah. Well, and Debbie's dad was in the military. He was in the Navy, but he was in the military. That's why he was on Guam, and he was there in one of his, assignments, and that's when Debbie was born. All right, James. Well, we got something in common there. Thanks for the call. I appreciate that. Let's grab a call from Gail in Ohio. Gail, welcome. What's on your mind? Talk to me.
Hi. I see all the time around Thanksgiving time. This has to do with immigration, by the way. How the Pilgrims and the Puritans all came here, and they took over, and they killed off the Indians, and they brought all these smallpox blankets and whatnot. You would think that they wouldn't want that to happen again. You would think that they wouldn't want to bring in more people that bring in diseases. They wouldn't want to bring in more people that bring in different kind of religious cultures that would stamp out their own.
Yeah. Well, you got a great, that's a great idea, Gail. And people have said, you may want to ask the Indians what they think about open borders and unrestrained immigration. They're probably not too hot on the idea. That's it for today. God bless you. See you back here tomorrow.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast do not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family